What's up, Paper Cup? Today we are going to talk about civil law. What comes to your mind when you hear civil law? Let's get started. The Civil Code of the Philippines is the product of the codification of private law in the Philippines. It is the general law that governs family and property relations in the Philippines. It was enacted in 1950 and remained in force to date with some significant amendments. So what are the types of civil law? First is partnership. Living together in civil partnership and legal differences. So living together means living together as a couple without being married or in a civil partnership. In some areas of law, you may not have the same rights as you would if you registered a civil partnership, although in other areas of law, you will. Your legal rights as a partner may depend on whether you are married or living together. Living together with someone is sometimes also called cohabitation. A living agreement explains the rights and responsibilities of each spouse toward the others. If you get into a living together agreement, you should also create a declaration of trust outlining how you will share your property. Let's talk about banking and living together. If you are living together with your partner and you both have separate bank accounts, neither of you can have access to money held in other one's account. If one of you dies, any balance in the account will be property of the person who died and cannot be used until the estate is settled. Next is inheritance and living together. If one of you dies without leaving a will, there are rules about how your property will be distributed. The surviving partner will not automatically inherit anything unless you and your partner own property together. Let's talk about civil partnership. In civil partnerships are available to both same-sex couples and opposite-sex couples. By registering a civil partnership, your relationship will receive the legal legitimacy. This will grant you more legal privileges and responsibilities. Once a civil partnership has been registered, it can only be dissolved by death or by petitioning the court to dissolve the relationship. Banking and civil partnership. If you and your civil partner have separate bank accounts and one of you dies suddenly, the bank may permit the surviving partner to withdraw any remaining funds. The amount remaining must be minimal. The bank would probably want evidence of your relationship and the death of your spouse. With that, let's talk about inheritance and civil partnerships. If either you or your partner dies without making a will, the other partner will still inherit some or possibly all of your property. If your civil partner dies and has made a will, you will inherit under the terms of the will if it makes provision for you. If a property is left to you by your civil partner, you do not have to pay inheritance tax on it. As civil partners, you may choose to establish an agreement known as a pre-registration agreement. Before registering your partnership, a pre-registration agreement can describe each party's rights and responsibilities as well as what should happen in the event of a relationship breakdown. It may include arrangements for your children and personal property, such as the family home and any pensions. Each of you should seek separate legal counsel before entering into a contract. That concludes civil law. Choose tourism, choose UE Manila.
A partnership is defined by the Philippine Civil Code Article 1767 as a contract between two or more persons, and in this contract they agree to contribute either money, property, or industry or even skills into a shared fund and the profit would be split among themselves. A partnership is separate from legal entity from that of the members of the partnership. They may benefit from bigger loans extended by financial institutions. This is because of the combined resources of the partners com- compared to a sole proprietorship. Now, due to the unlimited liability of partners in general partnerships, the company may put their personal properties at risk, as this may be seized by the bank or other financial institutions. However, in the limited partnership setup, some partners may only be held liable only up until the amount of their capital, this contribution to the partnership itself. So meaning they're only going to be responsible for how much that they've put into the company and not for every single thing that the company has to pay for. Now, there are two types of partnership in the Philippines. So just like what I've mentioned earlier, there's going to be a general partnership and there's also going to be a liable or limited partnership. So in general partnership, the partners are going to be held liable for or indefinite. They're going to be held liable indefinitely for the debts or the duties of the partnership. So basically, if they decide to take a loan and it's going to be under a general partnership, once they went bankrupt, all of their personal property or assets might be affected by this loss. However, it's different on a limited partnership. So some partners are going to be held liable indefinitely for the debts and duties of the partnership, while some are only going to be held responsible only within the amount of their capital contribution to the partnership. So the startup expenses of building a partnership are relatively low compared to establishing a corporation. So the requirements for establishing a partnership are considerably fewer in partnership. Now, generally, there should be an equal right on how to manage the business. So basically, in terms of decision making, it should be coming from all the persons involved in that specific partnership. One disadvantage is that as a contract between partners, a partnership may easily be dissolved upon incapacity, withdrawal, and death of a partner.
Obligation and contract. Obligation, a juridical necessity to give, to do, or not to do. Yung juridical necessity means ay mga kailangan nilang gawin between the two parties. Ang obligation naman is the duty ng obligor not to satisfy a specific demandable claim ng obligee which, if break or fail to do, it is enforceable in court. Example niyan is kung may utang ka sa tao, tapos kailangan nung ibigay yung same amount ng utang mo or depende sa kontrata na napag-usapan nyo. So we have elements of obligation. Number 1, active subject. Siya yung sinabihan ng bibigyan. Or creditor obligee. It means it demands the prestation. Number 2, passive subject. Siya yung magbibigay or debtor obligor. It means it is the doer of prestation. Number 3, prestation. Ito yung kailangan gawin ng obligation. In English, it is the subject matter of obligation. Number 4, vinculum juris or juridical tie. Ito yung reason why obligation na nagkakaroon ng prestation demandable. Example is, bibigyan kita ng pera. Yung subject, ang active subject ay yung bibigyan ko ng pera. Yung passive subject naman is ako yung magbibigay ng pera. Yung prestation naman is yung pera na ibibigay ko. Yung vinculum juris naman is yung sinabi kong bibigyan kita ng pera. Contract. Yung contract is meeting of minds between two parties where one binds himself to other for service or gives something verbal or non-verbal. Pero, ang obligation, it does not always need to have a contract. Tapos sa contract, dito manggagaling yung obligation. So, we have 3 stages of contract. Yung first one is preparation, conception, or generation. In this period of negotiation and bargaining, ending at the moment of agreement of the parties. Dito magkakaroon ng usapan kung ano ang mangyayari sa kanilang kontrata. Pangalawang step is perfection or birth of the contract. In this stage, it is the moment where the parties come to agree on the terms of the contract. Dito natin malalaman kung ano ang mga pinag-usapan ng both parties about sa kanilang kontrata. And in this stage, dapat both parties should agree to the contract that is made. Di pwedeng may isang party na hindi mag-agree kasi it will lead to another problem. Last stage is the consummation of or death, the fulfillment or performance of the term agreed upon in any contract. Dito sa last stage, dito natin malalaman kung magagawa ba nila yung nasa contract.
Today we are going to talk about the law of sales in civil law, which is a set of rules that governs the sale of goods between parties. The law of sales in civil law defines a sale as a contract by which one party, the seller, transfers ownership of a good or property to another party, the buyer, in exchange for payment of a price. In order for a sale to be valid under civil law, there are several requirements that must be met. First, there must be a meeting of the minds between the buyer and the seller as to the price and the thing being sold. Second, the seller must have the legal capacity to sell the thing being sold. Third, the thing being sold must exist and be identifiable. Under civil law, the seller has several obligations to the buyer. These include the obligation to deliver the thing being sold to the buyer, the obligation to transfer ownership of the thing being sold to the buyer, and the obligation to warrant the quality of the thing being sold. The buyer also has several obligations under civil law. These include the obligation to pay the price of the thing being sold to the seller, the obligation to accept delivery of the thing being sold, and the obligation to inspect the thing being sold and notify the seller of any defects or problems. If either party fails to meet their obligations under the contract of sale, the other party may have several remedies available to them under civil law. These remedies include the right to rescind the contract, the right to demand specific performance, and the right to seek damages. So, there you have it. The law of sales in civil law is a complex set of rules that governs the sale of goods between parties. By understanding these rules, you can better navigate the process of buying and selling goods, and ensure that your rights and obligations are protected under the law.
Welcome to tax law. First, what is tax law? It covers the rules, policies, and laws that oversees the tax process, which involves charges on estates, transactions, property, income, licenses, and more by the government. Now let's move on to the taxation, which it also includes duties on imports from foreign countries and all compulsory levies imposed by the government upon individual for benefit of the states. The intricate body of tax law covers payment of taxes to a minimum of 4 levels of government, either directly or indirectly, wherein indirect taxes are assessed against products and services that are meant to be consumed, but are paid to an intermediary, while direct taxes are those you pay directly to the government and are imposed against things like land or real property, personal property, and income.
Principle of tax law. It means that sources of revenue taken as a whole should be sufficient to meet the expanding expenditures of the government. It is a plan for how the government spends taxpayers' money and how it pays for its activity, its borrowing, and the repayment of its borrowing. The second one is equality or theoretical justice. Tax burden should be proportionate to the taxpayer's ability to pay. Ability to pay principal. Okay, Article 6, Section 28, the rule of taxation shall be uniform and equitable. The Congress shall involve a progressive system of taxation.
Mabuhay! So let's talk about what income tax. Income tax is a tax on a person's income, payment, profits arising from the property, the practice of the profession, conduct of trade or business, items of gross income specified in the Tax Code of 1997 as amended, less the deduction, if any, authorized for such as type of income by the Tax Code as amended or other special law. For example, the tourists come with a broad range of taxes. They could have to pay an entry tax when they enter another country or leave. Customer may pay an additional carbon or noise tax on the top of the airfare. They pay taxes on the various purchases during their vacation, including hotel accommodation, restaurant meal, gift and souvenirs, and also car rental to the tourist attraction. Also, there are two different income taxes, individual and non-individual. So, what are you waiting for? Choose tourism, choose UE Manila.
Okay, so let's talk about types of income tax. The first one is individual tax. A taxpayer is an individual or entity that is obligated to make payments to municipal or to government taxation agencies. Taxes can exist in the form of income taxes or property taxes imposed ownership of real property such as homes, vehicles, along many other forms. For example, resident citizens receiving income from sources within or outside the Philippines. Next is employees deriving purely compensation income from two or more employers concurrently or successively at any time during the taxable year. Next is self-employed individuals receiving income from the conduct or trade of business and practice on profession. The next type is non-individual tax. Corporation including partnership, no matter how created or organized. Next is domestic corporation, receiving income from sources within and outside the Philippines. Next is foreign corporation, receiving income from sources within the Philippines. Lastly, estates and trusts engaged in trade or business.
The travel tax is a levy imposed by the Philippine government on individuals who are leaving the country, irrespective of the place where the air ticket is issued and the form of place of payment, as provided for by Presidential Decree 1183 as amended, wherein 50% of the proceeds from travel tax collection shall accrue to the CHAZZ, 40% shall accrue to the Commission on Higher Education for tourism-related educational programs and courses, and 10% shall accrue to the National Commission for Culture and Arts, which is the NCCA. Now, who pays for the full travel tax? These are the taxable foreign passport holders, non-immigrant foreign passport holders who have stayed in the Philippines for more than 1 year. Next is the exempted from paying travel tax, which are the overseas Filipino workers, which is the OFW, Filipino permanent residents abroad who stay in the Philippines less than 1 year, and lastly is the infants who are 2 years and below.
What is sales tax? A sales tax is a consumption tax imposed by the government on the sale of goods and services. A sales tax is also a tax paid to a governing body for the sales of certain goods and services. Usually, laws allow the seller to collect funds for the tax from the consumer at the point of purchase. So what is the example of sales tax? One of the example of sales tax is what you call value-added tax, or commonly known as VAT. We often see it in our grocery receipts. So how much is value-added tax or VAT? It is 12%. A 12% VAT of the gross selling price is imposed to all importation, sale, barter, exchange, or lease of goods or properties, and sale of services.
A property tax is an ad valorem tax based on the value of a property, which rate is represented as a percentage or per mile, often known as millage. The governing body of the region where the property is located is responsible for collecting the tax. A town, a country, a federated state, or the federal government are all examples of this. A same property may be taxed by several jurisdictions. Real property tax occurs every January 1. It could be paid one time for the entire year or in quarterly installments on or before the following dates: March 31, first installment; June 30, second installment; September 30, third installment. Based on Section 218 of the Local Government Code, these are the typical assessment levels: residential 20%, agricultural 40%, commercial, industrial, and mineral 50%. So, yun, for example, may buyer na kailangan bumili ng gusto niyo bumili ng property, pero kailangan niya maganda ng 16%. So, for example, yung buyer gusto bumili ng ng property na worth of 5 million pesos, kailangan niya ba maganda ng 5.8 million pesos. So, saan nga ba, bakit nga ba niya kailangan maganda ng 16%? Saan nga ba mapupunta yung 16%? So, syempre, ito yung mga proseso or process na kailangan ng buyer malaman kung saan ba mapupunta yung 16% para makabili yung buyer ng property. So, una yung lottery fee na 1% to 2%. So, ito yung binabayaran sa abogado para sa pag-notary ng deed of absolute sale para gawing legal yung documents ng pagbebenta. So, susunod naman is yung transfer tax na 0.5 hanggang 0.75% yung presyo ng pagbebenta. So, ito, nakadepende naman yung transfer tax sa kung saan yung property, kung saan yung location ng property. So, for sure, mas mahal kapag malapit ka sa Maynila or sa malapit ka sa mall, malapit ka sa mga store or yun. Tapos pagkatapos nun ay magbabayad ka ng 1% para sa registration. So parang katulad lang din siya ng notary fee. And then yung kabuuan na babayaran mo dun is 1.5 hanggang 3.75. Ngayon papasok naman yung capital gains tax o CGT. Na babayaran mo ay 6%. Yung CGT naman ay yung pakinabang na pinapalagay ng nagbebenta mula sa pagbebenta. Yun. And then pagkatapos nun ay papasok naman yung documentary stamp tax na babayaran mo ay 1.5%. Tapos yung documentary stamp tax naman, yun yung documents or instruments, yung kasunduan ng sa pautang, ganyan, or papers na nagpapatunay sa pagbili ng property, pagbebenta ng property. So, yun yung ibig sabihin ng documentary stamp tax. So, sa kabuuan na babayaran mo dun is 3% hanggang to 12%. So, yun yung standards na kailangan mong gawin para makabili ka ng property. So, yung mga kailangan mong bayaran para makabili ng property is notary fee na 1% to 12%, local transfer tax 0.50% to 0.75%, registration fee 1%, documentary stamp 1.50%, tapos capital gains tax is 6%, and real estate agent fee is 3% to 5%.